All right, today we're diving into something pretty wild. It's called Eirunomics, and it's this incredibly ambitious 25-year plan. But it's not just about building a company. It's about landing what it calls a virtual unicorn. It's a fascinating and maybe even a bit of a crazy idea, but it could really give us a glimpse into a new way of mixing business with culture.
The whole thing really hinges on this one big, thought-provoking question. What if a startup was also a civilization? This just goes so far beyond your typical talk of code and capital. It's really about weaving together cosmology, community, and commerce into one radical idea.
So to really get your head around Eirunomics, you've got to think on two levels at the same time. On one hand, you have the stuff we all know, right? The terrestrial and juridical. That's your offices, your contracts, your legal entities, the day-to-day, real-world stuff. But then, on the other hand, you have the celestial and civilizational. This is a much deeper mythic world, drawing on Irish cosmology, ancient gods, and collective memory. The whole point of the project is to exist in both of these worlds at once.
So, the big question is, right, how on earth do you actually structure something like this? How do you make something so complex work? Well, the answer is in its architecture, which is this really clever three-layered institution. Let's break that down.
Okay, so think of it like a stack. At the very top, you've got the mythic layer. This is the big why. It's the core identity, the cosmology, the thing that gives it all meaning. Then, below that is the communion layer. Communion is an Irish word for a society, and this is the social glue, the community, the guides, and finally, at the bottom, holding it all up, is the bankable layer. This is the concrete, corporate side of things that deals with contracts, compliance, and, the money. It's the vessel that lets the mythic part actually function in the real world.
And here's what's absolutely crucial. The secret sauce, really. The source material is very clear about this. You can't let these layers bleed into each other. If you start mixing the mythic stuff with your legal contracts, everything just gets confused and messy. But if you keep them separate while making sure they can still work together, then the whole venture gets something really special. The power of myth, the strength of community, and real-world business credibility.
It's a really cool architecture, right? But it does make you wonder, why now? What's changed that makes a project like this even remotely possible today? What's the engine that could actually let a virtual unicorn land?
Well, a massive piece of the puzzle is technology. I mean, just look at this number. The cost for really capable AI systems has plummeted by a factor of 280 in just 2 years. That's just an insane drop. And a shift like that makes the virtual part of this whole model not just possible, but incredibly efficient.
And it's not just that AI is cheaper, it's what it can do. It's a massive productivity multiplier. As you can see here, industries that are really leaning into AI are seeing 3 times the growth in revenue per employee. Now think about what that means for a project like Eirunomics. A very small core team can do an incredible amount of work and scale their operations globally.
So, the tech is there, it's powerful, it's cheap. But is anyone actually interested? Is there a real market for this? Oh yeah. The plan is looking at a potential strategic reach of 80 million people. That's the estimated size of the global Gaelic and Celtic diaspora. So this isn't some tiny niche project. It's tapping into a huge worldwide cultural identity.
Okay, so we've got the what, that 3-layer architecture, and we have the how, the AI engine. Now let's get into the when. And this is where it gets really different from a typical startup. This isn't a quick sprint to the market. We are talking about a deliberate 25-year journey, all broken down into 5 distinct phases.
So the journey kicks off with proof of stack, which is basically just making sure the core system works and can be repeated. Then it moves to productization, where they take all the teachings and dialogues and turn them into structured IP that an AI can actually serve up. By the 2030s, the focus shifts to building a real institutional network. That's the scale and governance you need to justify a unicorn price tag. From there, it goes global, expanding into a Celtic Crescent Federation. And the final stretch? It's all about legacy, making sure this whole thing can sustain itself for generations, long after the founders are gone. So, you go through all that, a quarter century of careful work. Where does it all lead? Let's talk about the payoff, because the financial projections for this model are frankly staggering.
Okay, so check this out. In their base case scenario, revenue is projected to hit 125 million euros by 2030. That's already pretty impressive. But the real mind-blower is the reserve fund. Because of disciplined compounding over time, it's projected to grow from 166 million to over 4 times billion by 2040, and then to a truly massive 13.3 billion euros by 2050. That just shows you the incredible power of playing the long game.
And here it is, the big headline moment.
Based on that kind of growth, the model projects that Eirunomics could plausibly hit that €1 billion unicorn valuation as early as 2032.
But wait, where is all this money supposed to come from? This projected revenue mix for 2050 tells a really interesting story. Look at that dominant slice. A whopping 68% comes from a high-value corporate service they call Cohesion. So it seems like that's the practical, bankable service that really anchors the whole operation and funds the grand mythic vision. Community memberships make up the next biggest piece.
Now, that's all the base case scenario. But we all know things rarely go perfectly according to plan, right? And this might be the model's real strength, its resilience. As the source material points out, this plan doesn't need to be perfect to still be historically significant.
Let's put that to the test. What if things are way tougher, and the project only achieves 1/3 of its goals, just 33% of the base case? Well, even then, it's still projected to build a financial reserve of 4.4 times billion euros by 2050. I mean, that's an extraordinary result for a failure scenario, and it really proves how robust this underlying model is.
All right, so let's pull all of this together. After seeing this grand vision, what does it all really depend on? Let's boil it down to the essential conditions that absolutely have to be met for this myth to actually become a reality.
The source material lays out 4 critical success factors. Number 1, they have to create a product system, turning all these ideas into repeatable AI-powered protocols. Number 2, and we've hit on this a few times, those distinct layers must be kept separate but connected. Number 3, it needs a guide multiplier, a way to train guides so the whole thing can scale socially, beyond just the founder. And number 4, strict reserve discipline. They have to be ruthless about compounding their surplus to create what the plan calls civilizational ballast. I love that term.
And that brings us to the final judgment, the big takeaway from the source material. It concludes that if those 3 layers, the mythic, the common, and the bankable, can be kept in the right relationship, then this whole idea of a virtual unicorn stops being a fantasy. It becomes a credible, long-wave outcome. A truly fascinating blend of ancient myth and future-forward technology.